Hello, I'm Jonathan Friedman, Admissions Director and Associate Professor at the International Institute for Secular Humanistic Judaism. An important aspect of IISHJ is providing adult learning opportunities and resources, along with our professional training programs and publications. It's a pleasure to be joined today by Rabbi Richard Address, the founder and director of Jewish Sacred Aging, which provides resources and texts that discuss the implications of the longevity revolution for baby boomers and their families. Richard, it's nice to talk to you.
Hi, Jonathan. Nice to be with you. Thank you for the invitation. Looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, me too. So, what is the longevity revolution? Why is it such an important reality to address?
Well, thank you for the question. The longevity revolution really is now part and parcel of the American Jewish community. The longevity revolution is the fact that we're living longer and living better on the whole, even though there's been a little drop in the expected lifespan post-COVID. Um, that we're living longer and living better, especially in the Jewish community. If you take the Pew study from 2020, so it's already 5, 6 years old, then when it came out, 49% of the total American Jewish community were pegged to be over 50 years of age. So extrapolate that out another half a decade, and you can make the case, as we do in my work, that over half the American Jewish community, however many millions you count, are over the age of 50. And we're now a multi-generational cohort. The 52-year-old family who may be getting ready for a bar mitzvah this weekend uh, may also then be caring for adult parents in their early 70s who also may be caring or involved with their parents in their 90s. And it's not fiction. And there's a big difference between the generational cohort um, and society in which we were raised in those three generations, as you probably know. So this longevity revolution has really um, exploded. It's a fact. And the sadness is that, given that, the majority of Jewish institutions, synagogues, etc., really haven't paid much attention to it. And yet, it's this generational cohort, led by the baby boomers, actually, who've helped transform American Judaism.
Yeah, that's very interesting that you're mentioning that. And I think, the dynamics of family have changed very much generation to generation. So, the super seniors, so to speak, had a very different experience than the seniors, than the baby boomers. And addressing those concerns, I would imagine, is also very important. The family just being spread out
Oh
around the
yeah,
country, around the world, that sort of thing.
and look, for those of the people who may be watching or listening to this who are grandparents, they know longevity, mobility, um, and in the training of colleagues, because I teach this, I've taught at HEC, the Olive Seminary, Melton, YU, Wurzweiler. We're woefully inadequately trained to deal with the dynamics of this longevity revolution. We spend a lot of time with the youth group, and there's nothing wrong with that. But this is this dynamic, and given the impact of medical technology, um, the economics of aging, which we talk about a lot of times, these concerns are walking into our rabbis, our colleagues' offices on a daily basis, regular basis. So that's why it's important to talk about this especially from the context of Jewish tradition and values and ethics.
Yeah, I think, it's still true that children are the future, but seniors are the future too. They're getting older and staying alive much longer.
Yeah, God willing, and the blessing of medical technology. If I was writing a prayer book, and there's absolutely no chance it's ever happening, um, one of the first brachot would be a blessing for medical technology, because there are people walking around right now who you may have gone to their funeral 10 years ago or 5 years ago, but now they're out on a cruise or playing golf or playing with their grandchildren and in pretty good shape.
Sure. Yeah. So you were ordained in 1972, and after
Mhm.
serving congregations, you started working for the Union for Reform Judaism, where you founded and directed the Department of Jewish Family Concerns.
Correct, correct.
What led you to devote your attention to families and aging?
It really started when I was a pulpit rabbi coming out of HUC around, well, about an hour and a half from you in Thousand Oaks, California. And I started to do some consulting work with congregations in education. Um, got did some writing. There was a conference way back in the early 70s around genetics that was really reported heavily in a magazine called Rolling Stone. Some of you may remember that magazine. Anyway, it sparked my interest. The first time I wrote on it was an article in the CCR journal called Test Tube Torah, which really said, hey, we're at the beginning. This is in the 1970s. We're at the beginning of something that's unbelievably happening, and we better get a hold of it. And the scientists themselves. Fast forward to when I worked for the URJ, they asked me to staff a couple of committees. One of them was on the bioethics, one was on care and community, and one was on aging. We started to do that for the movement in 97. Given all the dynamics and studies that we were looking at, I convinced the powers that be in New York to create a whole program department just dealing with changes in the families, much of which had to do with aging, but all the LGBTQ, disabilities, care and community, bioethics, um, anything to do with what was happening in the Jewish family came out of our department. And when the URJ sunsetted all the program departments about a decade ago, around 11, 12, something around there, I decided I knew what was coming. We had all the data, and I just took Jewish Sacred Aging public, and it's been basically my full-time job working with congregations, organizations, and seminaries since. And it's a lot of fun because it's very energizing intellectually, spiritually, emotionally, academically. That's the short form of about 50 years,
Yeah, thanks for the summary. Aging is, of course, a part of life, I guess if we're lucky.
if we're
But
lucky.
what is unique about aging Jewishly and sacredly?
Well, on one level, nothing, because we're all aging, God willing. On another level, the application of specific Jewish values and texts to an approach of how we get older. There's a difference between getting older and growing older. And in the Jewish perspective, I believe, and we teach this, it's really growing older. A lot of people just exist. They get older. But just on the top of my head, Parasha Lech Lecha, um, go forth into a world that you will not know. Well, this is basically what we do every day when we get up and say Modeh Ani. We're really entering we don't know what's going to happen. The traditional values that apply to our growing older, the values of dignity, of sanctity, of education, of Torah Lishma, of Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam, the idea that according to Jewish tradition, we never stop growing. Even at the end of our life, we are a vehicle for mitzvot, um, regardless of where we are and the circumstances. And every colleague, you've seen this too with individuals. Um, this gift of the Jewish tradition, it's like the bet, that midrash of the bet at the beginning of Breshit. It's closed all around but open to the future. That, in a nutshell, is a Jewish way of looking at how we grow older Jewishly, because we're always open to more. We don't know what's going to happen, Lech Lecha, or to quote another famous piece of Torah that I use a lot of time in workshops. There's a Peanuts cartoon with Snoopy and Charlie Brown, and they're sitting at the end of a dock, and Charlie Brown's bubble says, Snoopy, one day we're all going to die. And Snoopy then turns and his bubble says, that's correct, Charlie Brown. But until that time, we're alive. In other words, you're living. So that's the gift. That's the gift of Judaism. And again, very briefly.
Yeah, and Lech Lecha is such an important portion as well. Avram at that time, it says, is 75 years old when he sets off to the place
Right.
that he will be shown, right?
And that's why that passion. And right before his father dies, and so part of the Jewish Sacred Aging program is to really deal with aspects of caregiving and growth and dealing with loss. And it's almost as if the tradition is saying sometimes if you're a caregiver, when that caregiving journey is over, either because somebody gets better or they pass away, it's almost as if you then life turns around and says, okay, you've fulfilled that fifth commandment. You've fulfilled that mitzvah of care. Now live your life. Some people can do it. Some people take that experience and grow with it. And some people, as you know, and all of our colleagues know, some people never stop. They can't get over that.
Mhm.
Um, then you factor in all the text dealing, the voluminous amounts of text dealing with bioethics and medical ethics, and where we are. You're in California, I'm in New Jersey. We both have legalization of medical aid in dying. The conservative reform movements have issued response on that. I was involved and have been involved with families. I wrote for the in favor of the legislation here in New Jersey. Well, our families are asking our colleagues, well, how 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 do we deal with this? You're dealing with issues of pain and suffering. Where does that happen in Jewish tradition? The removal of life support, when, how? Their tradition has spoken about all of this very relevantly across the denominational lines. We just haven't done a really good enough job of teaching our people that the richness of the tradition can speak to where we are in our life. For example, what we're involved with, there's three file folders behind me somewhere on all these collection of new rituals driven by the boomers in many cases, who are living and experiencing things we've never done before, and they turn to their tradition and say, okay, um, how do I begin to deal with? I want a ritual to entering the assisted living. I want a ritual for um, older adult cohabitation without marriage. I want this Simchat Chochmah that we teach and we write about on the website. Um, all these things are happening now. It's a very, very exciting time. Very, very exciting time. And that's what Jewish Sacred Aging, that's what we're involved with, and the website and the weekly podcasts.
That's great. And I know that you provide resources and workshops for different communities.
Yeah.
What might be some examples of those?
Let's say, I guess in the last couple of years, I think the top three, it's always caregiving, because caregiving is a new life stage. Uh, I and you're Kendra, you've seen this. Every colleague has seen this. It's not caregiving doesn't necessarily last a week or 2 weeks, but you could be dealing with being a caregiver, which impacts the entire family system for months, years. Alzheimer's, dementia patients, we've all have experience with this, sometimes decades. So the caregiving is number one. Number two, the new rituals has gotten a lot of, because people are very interested in some of these new rituals that speak to certain things. For example, the ones I just mentioned, um, a couple of others that have gotten some interesting conversation when we teach them the removal of a wedding ring after the year of mourning, um, the redefinition of adultery in light of Alzheimer's and dementia. All of this is happening in our congregations. It is not fiction. Um, One of the other workshops, other than the bioethics workshop, usually how to make a sacred decision at the end of life, given all the impact of medical technology. And one of the things now, given the mishigas that's happening in the country, is what I call the economics of aging. Um, and there's Jewish texts, the workshop we do, of how does the tradition look at how we allocate minimum amounts of standards of healthcare for a society. Is it the society's responsibility or is it the individual's responsibility? It's very relevant now with all the changes in healthcare and the economics, and people are interested to find out, well, Judaism does have a position on this across the denominational lines.
It's very interesting. So, what are some of the most important lessons you've learned from doing this work?
I would say, and we formally started Jewish Sacred Aging um, 10, this is 2020, about 10, 12 years ago. And I would say that resilience, blessing, People want to be a blessing. Kindness. In the end, people very want to be kind. They don't want to be alone. It's Genesis 2:18. Uh, because as you get older, the ultimate aloneness, Genesis 3, of death and what stares us right in the face. There's a fear of being alone, and there's also a fear of what I call now the inevitability of invisibility of people as they get older, especially in our society, which is still ageist, of just being invisible. You know, it goes to the American society of your value is associated with what you can produce. And if I'm not producing anything, what value do I have? It's just a whole other conversation. And of course, Judaism, Tselem Elohim, dignity, sanctity of human being, you always have that value. Um, the idea of creativity, that it's the lecha, you never stop being creative. How many times have we interviewed people who left a full-time job or, quote, retired, and then wound up doing more than they've ever done before because they've been given the freedom, if they're given the gift of longevity, to do something that they've always wanted to do. Volunteering, had podcasts with doctors who leave their full-time practice, quote, retire so that they can go on missions to Africa or Central America um, for vaccines, et cetera, et cetera. Um, some of these are some of the just so you know, very quickly off the top of my head, some of the values and some of the lessons. I think mostly it's the sense of the blessing of being alive and the blessing of understanding that at this stage of our lives, we can give back to society.
Yeah, I've spoken to a lot of older people who actually never had children, and they're wondering, what is my legacy? What do I leave behind? Will anyone
Right.
care that I ever lived? This sort of thing as well.
Well, they're now in literature, and this is happening in our community too because of longevity. There's a whole cadre of what is called solo agers. There's books been written. We've done a couple of podcasts on this. These are people who have no family, have no children, and when you sit with them and say, "Well, we're going to talk about your advance directive and who do you want," they'll turn around and say, "Well, Cantor, my friends who I would nominate, they're all in the same boat that I am. We're all getting ill and frailer, so I don't even know who to nominate. Who, if God forbid I can't speak for myself, who's going to speak for me?" So this solo ager thing is something that was just beginning to bubble up in the literature. Um, Likewise, there's this other phenomenon called gray divorce that hit the New York Times about 5 years ago. But the number one of the, not the largest cohort that are being divorced in this country right now are older adults because they're living longer, empty nest. Somebody may say, well, I have 20, 30 years, God willing, of life. I need, and a lot of it's being, according to the divorce lawyers we've talked to, a lot of this is being generated by women, not necessarily men, because of the change in the family dynamics. All this is happening. This is why this is such exciting work right now.
What's the best way for our audience to get in touch with you if they're interested in having you present or looking through the resources?
The best thing to do is go to the website, jewishsacredaging.com. And parenthetically, if anybody watches this or listens to this would like to write for the website, we have people writing for it from all over the country and from different perspectives, everything from prose to poetry. Uh, and that's the best way. On the website is a list of workshops, but just email me. You can email me at rabbiaddress@jewishsacredaging.com or RF as in Fred address, RF address at Gmail. And also on the website are the podcasts. We do a weekly Seekers of Meaning podcast. We post a new one every Friday, and it has something to do with longevity, sacred aging, theory, ethics, theology, and family issues associated with, because all of this is a family dynamic. It's just not older people. It's, my children, um, I've tried to tell them that it could be very expensive to take care of me, and those conversations are really important. But that's another story for another time.
Well, thank you so much, Richard, for joining me.
My pleasure, Jonathan. You take care, stay safe, and stay healthy, and watch out for the traffic on the 10.
Thanks so much. And thank you to our audience for watching.
Take care.